Chapter 35 Nightmare. The Badlands Hive. Cardus, Spike, and Twilight Sparkle stood in the small side room connecting to the hive's main storage chambers. These rooms were adjacent to the central love reservoir and contained what seemed to be unlimited supplies of food, equipment, building materials, weapons, and everything else they could possibly need. The room they currently inhabited was a plain square shape, with a central table that had various utensils spilled all over it. Spike the Dragon glanced over a list of names one last time before putting down that particular scroll and picking up another in his claws. And that is the guard roster arranged. Spike scribbled a check next to the completed task. Now that we know who's coming and who's not, we just need to pack. Cardus snorted. I swear, ever since you two came along, this hive has been on a tighter schedule than ever before in its entire 1,000-year history. Spike chuckled at the captain's comment. Well, what can I say? We pride ourselves on not being tardy. Right, Twilight? Twilight nodded in return, with a smile on her face. Most definitely. Cardus could do naught but shake his head. Twilight looked down at a checklist of her own, scanning through a few pages intently. She nodded whenever she saw something was in order, scribbled in a few notes here and there as reminders for later, and after everything was ordered in a way she was happy with, she gave a satisfied sigh and placed the list down onto a nearby table. Whew! All right then. Everything is ordered into a few easy steps, consisting of most important to least important, and then each section of importance is listed in the most logical order with a nice little numerical guide to... Whoa, Princess, we get it. Cardus stopped Twilight in her ranting tracks. It's organized. I'm sure we'll manage from here. Twilight grinned sheepishly, lowering herself slightly. Yeah, of course. Sorry, I almost got carried away there. Again. She chuckled to herself. Cardus raised an amused eyebrow. With a cough, Twilight stood straight up again. Anyway, will you be okay sorting this without me for a little while? It's been a few hours, so Pinky's party should have calmed down a bit. I really need to talk to them to explain things. You can count on us, Your Highness, Cardus said, throwing a salute. We'll have everything arranged for when you get back. Thanks. If you need my help at any point, I'm a single ping over the hive mind away, Twilight assured before trotting over to the single wooden door acting as an entrance and exit to the room, and leaving the other two to it. Rolling his eyes, Cardus walked up to the wooden table and picked up Twilight's checklist. A small, creased frown appeared on his features as he read the top of page 1. Step 1. Please take a moment to go over the list at least 3 times and take in every detail, making sure you understand the importance of... Seriously? Cardus looked down, rather bemused by it all. A common thing when it came to Twilight and her checklists. She's just being thorough, Spike shrugged, taking the checklist from Cardus's grasp. I know, but can we just skip the first step just this once? Spike gave Cardus a fang-filled smirk. No pony or changeling defies the checklist. Spike picked up a quill and promptly began step 1. Cardus deflated. The Crystal Empire. The royal carriage made its way down the long highways leading directly to the very front of the palace ahead. The journey was smooth and comfortable, thanks to the material of the road, a surface that, along with the rest of the empire, was made of cut crystal. Other carriages came and went down various side streets, all giving the royal carriage right of way. The crystal ponies went about their day-to-day lives as they walked down the pathways either side, entering and exiting the various houses and establishments lining them. Many stopped to gawk as the carriage passed them. Foals and fillies waved with gleeful grins, and the odd pony even bowed as they passed, all knowing that at least one of their royals would be riding within, even though the windows from the outside were blacked out.
"Oh my gosh, I love this place!"
Scarlet near squeaked as she looked out the window.
"It's so different from anywhere in Equestria I've ever been. And I've been to pretty much all of it in the EUP sometime or another."
"Well, I'm glad you like it," Shining Armor said. "We've put a lot of time and effort in bringing this place up to speed with the modern world. It's not been entirely easy for the crystal ponies, most of whom were born well over 1,000 years ago. The economy was nothing. Their farming practices, education system, all obsolete, among other things." Shining sighed. "There were so many problems. I know there are some crystal ponies who, at first, would have preferred to remain a city-state separate from Equestria, but they couldn't have denied that on their own, this city would have simply wasted away in the snow." "At least they've kept their cultural identity," Vladimir pointed out. "My kind lost much of ours after Princess Luna was banished, and equestrian culture began to override our own. It's only thanks to Princess Luna's efforts now that some of the old thestral traditions are beginning to make a comeback." "Well, annexation can cause problems like that," Shining admitted. "But this place means a lot to Cadence. It's part of her family's history, part of her. She takes her role as the Crystal Princess very seriously, and is adamant about keeping the Crystal Empire as intact as it is." Scarlet tore herself away from the window and looked at Shining.
"Oh, yeah. Princess Cadence is descended from Queen Amorai, right?"
Shining nodded. "Yes, and she found out in her teens."
"In her teens? She didn't know before that?"
"She found out on her ascension, from Pegasus to Alicorn, defeating a dark magic wielder named Prisma with her own innate love magic. She never really knew her biological parents. They abandoned her in some forest as a child with nothing but a name. Her real parents, though, were Earth ponies who found and raised her. They're a nice couple. We actually just visited them a few weeks back." "When I was a Crude, I was on the team tasked with tracking down her biological parents," Broadsword chimed in. "We never did find them, though." "It's for the best." Shining Armor grimaced. "Ponies like that don't deserve a wonderful mare like Katie as a daughter." Shining's attention was caught by something else out the window, a shadow creeping over the carriage as they passed under the palace. "Aha! We have arrived!" Sure enough, the carriage slowly crept to a halt. Several servants were already waiting to receive the luggage on arrival. Shining Armor opened the carriage door and stepped outside, his guests following shortly behind as the servant shot past to grab everything and bring it to the guest rooms assigned to the 3 visitors in the palace itself. In the middle of the organized chaos, Princess Miyamori Cadenza herself slid her way through the other ponies to greet the new arrivals. Princess Flurryheart sat contently on her back between her 2 large pink wings.
"There you are!"
Cadence walked up to her husband and gave him a quick nuzzle before she turned to the rest of the group.
"I trust the trip was comfortable?"
"Your Highness!" Both Vladimir and Broadsword snapped to attention out of habit, causing the other 3 to roll their eyes.
"Come on, dear."
Scarlet jabbed her husband in the ribs.
"You can stop embarrassing yourself now."
Cadence tittered behind a hoof.
"She is right, you know. You are a personal guest, so I won't have any of that this week, if you don't mind."
Sorry." Vladimir rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment. "Force of habit. When you're captain of the guard for 7 years without any leave, stuff tends to stick." Cadence's eyes locked on the Broadsword and Scarlet.
"And there are the newlyweds. I always love to see a true romance flourish like this."
Shining rolled his eyes behind his wife's back, though she noticed, and as a result, he received a swat in the face from her tail.
Cadence,
Scarlet greeted cheerfully.
oh, it's good to see you again. And I really must thank you again for officiating at our wedding. A captain of the Royal Guard and an officer of the EUP. After everything you two have done, I just had to perform the ceremony.
Cadence beamed.
Besides, as the Princess of Love, how could I resist?
Flurry Heart poked her head up above her mother's, looking curiously down onto the new ponies.
Hello there,
Scarlet said to the young princess.
You must be Flurry Heart. Oh, you are adorable,
she said, booping the baby alicorn on the nose. Flurry Heart gurgled happily at the attention, burying herself in her mother's mane.
I think she likes you,
Cadence chuckled.
Come on, let's get you all inside. Once you get settled in, we can show you around the palace.
Cadence pointed a wing towards the palace's entrance, and Shining led Broadsword and Vladimir forward, while Cadence and Scarlet Snow took up the rear.
And you can tell me all about the honeymoon,
Cadence whispered into Scarlet's ear, a mischievous grin on her face. A somewhat evil smile crept onto Scarlet's muzzle.
Oh, I plan to.
With that, Celestia's sun began to set into the horizon. The Badlands. Twilight walked out into the large atrium that sat in the very center of the hive, and found it empty. Obvious signs of Pinky's party were everywhere, from streamers to confetti from her party cannon. A few tables and chairs were broken, probably from Rainbow Dash's flying brigade of mischief. But now, the atrium was quiet. And it wasn't just that the party had ended. There wasn't a soul in sight.
Hello?
Twilight called out, receiving no reply to her call. Twilight flew up to the exact spot where she and her friends had been sitting earlier. She saw what little was left of their drinks and meals still on the table, but there was no sign of the ponies themselves.
Rarity? Applejack? Any pony?
Twilight tried again. And still, Twilight could see and hear nothing but the sound of her own hooves echoing through the vast cavern.
Mother, do you know where my friends are?
Twilight decided to see if Chrysalis knew something, but there was no reply.
Mother?
Still nothing. Twilight was dumbfounded. She tried again and again. Both times, she received only dead silence. She then tried contacting Cardus, Panacea, several of her guards, random drones across the hive, and even little Uvenus. No one responded.
What?
Twilight stammered, as she tried to rid herself of the creeping sense of loneliness coming down upon her. That was when a hoof touched her shoulder. With a frightened gasp, Twilight whipped around to face whoever crept up on her, fangs bared out on instinct. Instead of a pony or a changeling, she found a long corridor.
Huh? Wasn't I just in the atrium?
Twilight said out loud, extremely confused. With little choice, she began to walk down the corridor. And so she walked, and she walked, and she walked some more, and yet the corridor never seemed to end. Twilight was more than a little nervous now. However, tired of making no progress, she decided to backtrack and see if she missed anything. The walk back was far shorter than it should have been, and it led to a single wooden door. Slowly, she pushed the door open, cautiously making her way inside. That was when she saw the bodies. Twilight stood there, frozen, literally unable to move as she looked down onto the 6 corpses in the room. and she recognized all of them. 3 were some of the changeling guards she had had with them on the day she was injured, and 2 more were members of the Solar Guard she also had with her that day. All of them had been killed by the assassins. The final was the broken body of Sergeant Longshot, his battered crossbow lying just a few meters away, blood soaked into the frame.
What is this? Where am I?
Twilight screamed out, tears breaching her eyes.
They died for you, Twilight.
A figure appeared in the very edges of Twilight's vision, its appearance flickering violently between the figure of the then Commander Broadsword and a changeling, but both were deformed and horrifying in appearance.
They died because of you, Twilight.
No, you killed them, but you're dead. Mother killed you. How are you here?
Isn't it obvious?
The figure questioned, but didn't go any further into it.
How many more will die before you just let me kill you?
What?
How many more will die for you?
The figure repeated. Twilight blinked, and when she opened her eyes again, there were many, many more bodies. She could see her friends, family, and the princesses all lying in pools of their own blood.
No! What have you done?
Finished the job. Queen Crudella sends her regards.
The name, the one that had eluded Twilight's memory for so long, came out as little more than static to Twilight's ears.
Sends her regards.
A knife flicked past Twilight, held in a putrid green aura. The changeling princess desperately tried to move, to call onto her magic, to do something, and yet all she could do was look on the knife as it slowly moved towards her heart.
Enough!
A blue beam of magic shot through the air, evaporating both the figure and the knife that was just inches from Twilight.
Princess Luna?
Twilight gasped out as she found her motor functions returned to her. The Guardian of Dreams approached Twilight with a sympathetic smile.
Are you well, Twilight Sparkle? I think so.
Luna nodded.
Good. It is early morning, and my sister will soon raise the sun, so perhaps it will be best to leave this place and rise from your bed. Do not fear. I will ensure your dreams next time are not as disturbing as this.
Before Twilight could say anything further, Luna placed her horn on Twilight and sent a jolt of blue magic through her. Twilight awoke with a start. Breathing heavily, she looked over at her surroundings. She was in her own bed, and a nearby clock on her desk displayed the time at being a little past 4 in the morning. With an annoyed groan at her memories of the nightmare, Twilight slumped back down onto her pillow. Sugar cube? A groggy Applejack called from the sofa she slept on. Twilight remembered the previous night. She had told her friends of their trip being cut short. They were disappointed, but understood, and to make the most of the single night they had, they decided to have a slumber party in Twilight's room. Now they were all either crashed out on the sofas in the center of the room, or on mattresses a few drones had brought in. Their snores reached Twilight's ears, and yet she found their mere presence comforting for what she had just experienced.
Applejack, you awake?
"Am now," was the reply. "What time is it?"
4.
Applejack groaned. Did you have a nightmare or something?
Yeah, about, that day.
Applejack sighed. Want to talk about it?
There's nothing to be said that hasn't already been said. I just wish I could remember the name. At least Luna saved me from the ending.
Try not to think about it too much. So we getting up or what? I'm used to rising before the princess's son.
Nah, that's all right.
Twilight said.
We should get away with a couple more hours.
Well, all right. Just take it easy, you hear?
Don't worry, AJ, I will.
Silence followed that, and soon Applejack was once more asleep. Twilight, however, laid awake for the remaining hours of darkness.